Hashtag the dark truth about ancient execution methods. Most people think ancient executions were just beheadings or hangings, but what if I told you our ancestors turned death into a science of suffering so horrific that modern minds can barely comprehend it? Practices so brutal that historians often sanitize them from textbooks, preserving the myth that we've always been fundamentally civilized.
But the truth is far darker.
The ancient world wasn't just brutal. It was methodically, creatively cruel in ways that revealed disturbing truths about human nature. And no execution method better exemplifies this than one particular technique perfected by the Persians around 500 BCE.
They called it scaphism.
The word itself sounds almost scholarly, derived from the Greek scaphe, meaning scooped out. But this clinical term masks what might be the most horrifying execution method ever devised. A process so deliberately torturous that victims would beg for death long before it finally came. Let me walk you through exactly what happened to someone condemned to scaphism, and I warn you, what you're about to hear represents the darkest capabilities of human imagination. First, the naked victim would be firmly secured between two hollow wooden boats, or sometimes hollow logs, fitted together to create a shell around the person's body. Only their head, hands, and feet would protrude from this wooden prison. Think of it as a primitive coffin, except you remain alive inside it, completely immobilized. Then came the first stage of the torture. Guards would force-feed the condemned a mixture of milk and honey, far more than any person could comfortably consume. The same sticky substance would be applied to their exposed face, hands, and feet. In the blistering desert heat, this mixture would begin to ferment inside their body while simultaneously attracting insects to their exposed skin.
But this was just the beginning.
The real horror of scaphism was that it transformed the victim's body into its own execution chamber. The honey-milk mixture would cause extreme diarrhea, but with the person unable to move, they would be forced to lie in their own excrement. This, combined with the existing honey coating their exposed parts, created the perfect environment for flies and other insects to lay eggs. Within days, the victim's body would become a living nest of maggots. These parasites wouldn't just feed on the honey and waste, they would begin consuming the victim alive, burrowing into their flesh. The wooden boat prevented escape while creating the dark, warm environment insects thrived in. Imagine feeling thousands of larvae hatching inside your wooden prison, slowly devouring you from the inside out while you remain completely conscious.
Historical accounts describe victims surviving in this state for up to 17 days.
One of the most detailed accounts comes from Plutarch, who described the execution of a Persian soldier named Mithridates. After killing Cyrus the Younger in battle, someone he wasn't supposed to kill, Mithridates was sentenced to scaphism by King Artaxerxes II. Plutarch writes that by the 17th day, when they finally removed the upper boat, they saw his flesh eaten away and swarms of nesting vermin devouring his entrails. The man's body had become so integrated with the insects that it was difficult to determine where his flesh ended and the writhing mass began. What's particularly disturbing is how methodical this torture was. The executioners would continue force-feeding the victim daily, ensuring they remained alive through the process. They weren't just killing a person, they were transforming them into something barely recognizable as human.
This wasn't punishment. This was annihilation of identity.
But here's where it gets even more disturbing. Scaphism wasn't some rare punishment reserved for the worst criminals. Historical records indicate it was used regularly enough that it had established protocols and was recognized across multiple ancient cultures. While the Persians may have perfected it, variations existed throughout the ancient world. You don't learn this in history classes, but ancient Rome, often celebrated for its advancements in law, architecture, and culture, practiced equally disturbing execution methods. One particularly horrific technique involved coating a condemned person in honey and staking them over an anthill. Emperor Nero was said to have had Christians covered in animal skins and thrown to wild dogs to be torn apart while still alive. These weren't primitive societies. These were the civilizations that built the foundational principles of modern governance, philosophy, and culture. The Brazen Bull of ancient Greece represents another pinnacle of calculated cruelty, invented around 560 BCE by parallels of Athens for the tyrant Phalaris. This hollow bronze statue of a bull contained a fire lit beneath it. The condemned would be placed inside the metal bull, which would then be heated until the person was roasted alive. But the true psychological horror was in the details. The bull was designed with a system of tubes and pipes that converted the victim's screams into sounds resembling a bull's bellows. Their agony became entertainment, their humanity completely erased as they were transformed into a spectacle of suffering. Paralaus, the inventor, reportedly told Phalaris, "His screams will come to you through the pipes as the tenderest, most pathetic, most melodious of bellowings." The tyrant Phalaris, apparently disgusted by the inventor's enthusiasm, decided the first person to test the device should be its creator. Historical accounts claim Paralaus was placed inside briefly to demonstrate the acoustics, then removed before death, only to be thrown off a cliff anyway.
The Brazen Bull would continue to be used for centuries.
What's particularly chilling about these methods isn't just their cruelty, but how they reflect a fundamentally different relationship with suffering than we acknowledge today. These weren't quick executions designed to end life efficiently. They were elaborate performances meant to obliterate not just the body, but the humanity of the condemned. Consider Chinese lynching, death by 1,000 cuts, a process where executioners would methodically remove small pieces of a person's body over an extended period, keeping them alive as long as possible. Historical photographs from the early 1900s show victims with large portions of their flesh removed while still conscious. The process could last days, with skilled executioners knowing precisely how much trauma a human could endure before death. But here's the revelation that truly changes how we should view history. These elaborate tortures weren't primarily about punishing the individual. They were sophisticated tools of social control. Executions in the ancient world weren't hidden behind prison walls. They were public spectacles. When Persian kings ordered scaphism, the suffering victim would be displayed where the population could witness their deterioration day by day. The message was clear. This is the cost of defying authority. The psychological warfare extended beyond the execution itself. Many cultures believed that how you died affected your afterlife. By condemning someone to a particularly horrific death, authorities were essentially claiming control over both their earthly existence and their eternal fate. We like to imagine we've progressed far beyond such barbarity, but the truth is more complex. Public executions remained common throughout Europe and America until relatively recently. The last public guillotining in France occurred in 1939. Public hangings continued in the United States until the 1930s, often with carnival atmospheres and souvenir photographs. Even our modern methods carry echoes of ancient cruelty. When the electric chair was introduced in 1890 as a humane alternative to hanging, the first execution went horribly wrong. Witnesses reported smoke rising from William Kemmler's head, the smell of burning flesh filling the room as he remained alive through multiple shocks lasting 8 minutes. One disturbed witness stated they would have done better using an axe. The lethal injection protocols used today in America were developed without medical expertise, as medical ethics prevented physician involvement. The resulting 3-drug protocol has been compared by some experts to modern scaphism, a methodical, drawn-out process that can cause extreme suffering while paralyzing the victim so they appear peaceful to observers. What connects these ancient horrors to modern methods is the fundamental dehumanization at their core. Each represents society's determination that some individuals can be stripped of their humanity, reduced to objects upon which we can inflict our darkest impulses while maintaining our self-image as civilized. Perhaps the most disturbing truth is that these capacities for calculated cruelty have never left us. They've merely been constrained by evolving cultural norms and technological capabilities. The same human minds that conceived of scaphism worked alongside those creating magnificent architecture, poetry, and governance systems. The real horror isn't what our ancestors did. It's recognizing that the potential for such methodical cruelty remains within human nature. Each time we dehumanize others, whether criminals, enemies, or those we consider other, we take small steps toward the mindset that enabled our ancestors to create hollow boats filled with honey and insects, bronze bowls with acoustic chambers, or methodical flesh removal protocols. As we look back at these practices with horror, we should remember that future generations may look back at our own methods with similar disgust, not because we haven't progressed, but because progress itself reveals the barbarism of what came before.